presentation on law enforcement assisted diversion. John Bauters.
Do you care if I just bring a chair up so I don't? Maybe you can just take one of each just to pass it down. I have just a few handouts for everyone. And I'm not going to go through all of these. These are mostly for the interest or edification of anyone after we're done. So thank you to the committee for inviting me to present on law enforcement assisted diversion, which those of us who work in the public safety space know as LEAD. In my professional job, I work on victims advocacy and alternatives to incarceration for low-level non-violent offenses. And I had the privilege in January of going up to Seattle, Washington, and spending a week with law enforcement leaders in Seattle and King County, Washington, who have been implementing for about 5 years now the LEAD program. And so what I wanted to do today was just very briefly provide a high-level introduction to what LEAD is, and because LEAD could be coming to California in a pilot study, and just bring our city's awareness of that to a place where we may be in a position in the future to discuss it as a potential model for us. So law enforcement assisted diversion is a partnership between what some might say is often an unlikely group of partners. Law enforcement personnel, prosecution agencies, whether that's a city attorney's office or a district attorney's office, the public defender, and case management and social work groups that provide health and human services interventions for people who are going through addiction, long-term recidivist behavior resulting from habitual drug use in most cases. The model does also contemplate assisting people who are involved in sex work, prostitution, and then as well as some civil rights groups. And so the origin of this is actually rather unique. There was a long, protracted legal battle based on claims that there was racist practices in the Seattle Police Department for a number of years between law enforcement and civil rights groups. And they kind of all got tired of the litigation and said, well, what are we actually going to just do about this? And LEAD was born from that. And so what LEAD does is LEAD is an alternative to the cyclical pattern of an officer dedicating time to arresting a person for drug use or drug possession who does not have a violent past. So the program is only open and eligible to people who are not engaged in other types of crime, burglaries, don't have violent assault. There's a whole category here in this larger packet that I'll leave with you about what's excluded from a person's background. But it focuses on treating a person who actually is not best suited going in and out of jail. You cite them, you arrest them, they get convicted, they serve probation, they go to jail for 20 or 30 days. In most cases, they're back out on the street. We haven't solved that cycle. And a lot of law enforcement time and resources gets consumed with known offenders for drug use. And so the vision of LEAD is a unique partnership. Each participant in the stakeholder community within LEAD retains all of their discretion and authority that they would have as if they were engaging in their normal course of practice. The difference is that there's a mutual discretionary decision made to identify, prioritize, and assist moving people who are known in most cases to law enforcement to be that habitual low-level drug user into an alternative course of remediation. So they're offered an opportunity to enter LEAD. And when I went up to Seattle, I spent a half day with each of this. So I spent a half day with the sheriff, half day with the police department, half day with the DA, and the last day they have the stakeholder meeting where they actually sit at a table like this, all of them together, and they actually go in live setting over their participants with one another. And it's actually rather fascinating. The program has been very successful. There's been a 60% decrease in recidivist behavior among people who enter LEAD as compared to people who do not enter LEAD, who are what's called control study group, people who were processed the exact same way law enforcement would typically process a person who is engaged in illegal behavior. And the benefits of the LEAD program are included on some of the handouts I had. One of them has the different types of services that are made available. But what the program does is it actually leverages existing resources from the county in particular. It uses existing staffing. So law enforcement would have a beat cop out who's going to make this patrol or make this arrest in a normal situation. They dedicate and train an existing officer. The DA's office dedicates one member of their staff who would be prosecuting cases. They'd be prosecuting these cases anyways, but they dedicate them to working on lead clients. And the lead client gets into the LEAD program one of two ways. There's either a pre-arrest referral, pre-booking referral, where Dante, sees me, finds me with us an illegal substance, and I'm known to be a person who's regularly using illegal substances, and he offers me the opportunity to not have this one particular charge brought against me. So it's the only thing law enforcement gives up in the entire process is the particular charge that is the referral basis to go into the LEAD program. And if I agree to a full assessment by the LEAD program staff, and I do that and complete that assessment within 30 days, the charge for the particular offense that I was referred through would not be filed against me. It does not preclude any future charges while I'm in the program from being filed against me. Nobody gives up any discretion to do that, but it allows for that to be a voluntary gateway for a person who's ready to engage alternative services, healthcare, addiction treatment, those types of services, to enter in voluntarily. So it uses the harm reduction model as a gateway for bringing people in, people who are ready to engage the program. So there are people in my situation in this example who would not accept the offer perhaps, or would not engage the referral. But those who do engage the referral then go through, and every 2 weeks they have a stakeholder meeting where, as I mentioned, everyone's at the table, and the lead case management social worker group that's contracted to provide the wraparound services would report back that John would tell the police department, John, you referred John on this day, John did an assessment, and we're working with John on these issues. These are the challenges John has. John's identified finding housing as a priority for him because he's homeless, or John hasn't been employed for 2 years, or there's a number of other social issues. And so what the case management staff does is what law enforcement doesn't have the capacity to do with all the other obligations they have. They actually begin working on rehabilitating that person's life, helping that person connect to other resources that exist in the community already that the person is just not resourced and tooled to identify and connect with. And so what happens is, this is a very interesting process, evolves over time, is sometimes you will see that person who's engaged in the illegal activity again, and what they found is that law enforcement becomes a support system for the person who's trying to leave addiction and leave drug use. And I will tell you the most fascinating piece about my time in Seattle was sitting at the meeting, about a dozen cops in the room, all in full gear, literally come off their beat for the 2-hour meeting, who, when we did Q&A with them, said, I thought this was a gimmicky thing. When I started, I've been a cop for 15 years, I thought this would be a gimmicky thing, but I have to tell you that after 8 months of doing this, I'm convinced that this is actually changing people's lives. They talk about how it's improved community police relations for them, because for people who are frequently the subject of cite and arrest, they're now actually running into the officer, and the officer has that discretion at every encounter to positively reinforce what the program is doing for the person. Hey, I heard you're going to treatment, you've been going to treatment for the last 3 weeks, that's really great. Why are you out here hanging with these guys? These guys, this is the reason that you failed treatment before. Let's not be over here. Let's find something. And the officers can have as a regular resource, they can contact the case management provider, and they are completely on call 24 hours a day, the staff at the case management agency, and they will literally come out, take the person to any place they need to go, any appointment, any meeting, any treatment program. And what they found is that in the harm reduction model, there are some people who are so ready for treatment that within 60 to 90 days they're well on their way to a different lifestyle. There are some people who take months. And the problem with some of the models that have been used in the past through drug courts and other types of more structured, institutionalized programs is that they have very arbitrary timelines. They predict how much time it will take a person to recover or to overcome certain parts of the addiction process, and that for those people who can't meet that threshold, who fail within those time constructs, they're less likely to then engage treatment providers. They're less likely to view law enforcement positively because they self-reflect as having failed, and they don't want to be invited back into the system. So the LEAD model is really trying to break open that notion that we should ascribe a certain period of time for a person to overcome addiction, and instead we can actually get better outcomes from people who are most likely going to continue to use and continue to be a drain on our local resources for years indefinitely to come. We have a better chance if we intervene early with a voluntary opportunity for them, where we don't give up discretion, minus the very first time we enter them into the program, to deal with them in the future as we need to. So if Dante sees me multiple times again and I've stopped going to my addiction, counseling or treatment or therapy or whatever I'm supposed to be doing and working on with my case manager and my plan, he would come to the meeting and I, as the case manager, may say, John's, pick up John. Next time you see him, pick up John's not really working with this anymore, and he has the full ability within the scope of his existing to do that. The prosecutors have the discretion as to how to charge and hold offenses that may come up while the person is in lead. So we learned from the DAs that they sometimes don't file new charges on people. And there's some really incredible stories from officers who talked about how they learned how much time some people took to, in their words, rehumanize away from a life of addiction. So I'm really hitting it at a high level here. The program is very widely supported. My organization and the Drug Policy Alliance brought these law enforcement leaders from Seattle. We had an informational hearing in the Senate in March, and it was very well attended. And in fact, all the legislators from the committees that were on the joint informational hearing attended and had very positive feedback. We are running a bill this year that would establish a LEAD program that has a matching pilot program budget ask that will be in the budget to give 4 California jurisdictions the resources to retain the case management providers and to and do the other pieces that are needed to kind of pull that program together. We had a closed session Q&A for California law enforcement agencies and groups that were interested in having private Q&A with the Seattle group away from staff and legislators. Chief Tejada was among the people who were in the room on behalf of Cal Chiefs that day to participate in that meeting. So I'm sure she'll have some thoughts to share here. I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of things I should probably talk about. But yeah, so I just wanted to put that out. I really appreciate the invitation because we share a border with parts of Oakland that have high levels of narcotics use, and I think that there's an opportunity there for us to really look at ways to think proactively. Business communities very strongly support the LEAD model in Seattle. It's gotten a lot of very positive reviews. And the only other thing I'll add is that it's not jurisdictionally like a citywide program. It's actually, in Seattle, it's an 8-block program. And they literally identify, and the officers know which neighborhoods have concentrated elements of illegal drug activity, and they focus all their work there, and they become a regular presence for the people that are engaged in that activity in that area, and that really allows them to clean up certain parts of communities that have drug-related blight. And so I'll stop. Please.
I think you covered it all.
Okay.
I think one thing that I learned in that session was that the drug addicts were not necessarily prompted to go into the program because they were given this or that by law enforcement, that the program is so well run and supports the individual to get out of addiction that those contacted, I think the University of Washington report says that it was almost like a 50-50. If a social worker contacted the person was as likely to go into the program as if a law enforcement person contacted them and said this or that. Mm-hmm. So I think it gives a lot of credibility to the program that it's not just the long arm of the law saying do this or else, that the program has shown such success and that people buy into it. I've long been an advocate that we should address drug addiction as a health issue and not a criminal issue, because you just need to look not too far from here to see that by arresting people for drug addiction has not had any impact from the criminal justice system. So this is an opportunity to look at that through the lens of public health and as a health issue, and has demonstrated success rate. I've been involved in discussions at the Capitol for the last 2 years on the LEAD program with Lonnie Hancock and her staff. So it's very nice to come to Emeryville and see that Mr. Bauters is also an advocate of LEAD and pushing that agenda. I'm not sure that we would have a pilot program in Emeryville because I don't think we have the numbers to justify funding it here, but I have reached out to our neighboring cities to see if there's interest in having a pilot program there. So we can always partner with them if they choose to be part of it as well, since our borders seem to hold many opportunities to put the LEAD program into play.
If I could just add one thing before the question, which is, I mentioned the pre-booking referral. There's actually a second way to refer a person to the program. It was actually, and it's called a social contact referral, and it was the genesis of law enforcement's own experience, where police officers, when they were doing the study, the control study, how are we going to test what the outcomes are, right? So they have an internal code called green light day and red light day. And a green light day meant that the officer would come out, and if they made contact with someone who was an appropriate referral for LEAD, the officer in their discretion could then offer the person, an assessment meeting for LEAD. On a red light day, LEAD was not an option. Law enforcement would do their traditional arrest and booking for a person. And they said about 4 weeks into their program, their green and red light day, they said they had a woman walk up to an officer in Seattle, and she said, "Is today a green light day or a red light day?" And he was like, "Huh? Like, how did she know the internal code?" She goes, "Huh?" He goes, "Huh?" And she says, "I just want to know." And he goes, "It's a green light day." She says, "Don't go anywhere." She runs away. She comes back about 3 minutes later with a crack rock in her hand. And she's like, "I want to get into this program." And so the officer thought, this is crazy. Why should a person who wants treatment have to bring me a controlled substance to get treatment? So they had a whole discussion about it. And so the officers said, we know these people. We know who's using it. And even if we see them on the street and they're not engaged in an illegal activity, then we know who's out there, who's been worn down by the elements, beaten down by living on the streets. We should be able to help, just proactively identify and help people and offer it to people. People who want it, we should be able to help them. So they opened a whole second process called the social referral process, where if an officer just gets to talking to someone in a totally not on the detention path sort of thing, and they're having a conversation with someone and that person wants that program, an officer suggests it or they come and ask for it, they can refer them into the system if they're appropriate. So it now has a much broader, law enforcement is in a position to just not have to engage the arrest process in order to refer a person into the system. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, but for Jennifer. I'm particularly interested in the fact that the program is not like citywide, but that it focuses on a particular area. And of course, when you said that, I immediately thought about San Pablo Avenue from 36 up to 53rd, because that is an area where we have constant repetitive police involvement with the same people over and over and over again. In your experience, Chief, are Oakland and Berkeley really looking at this, really considering it?
I will say that Berkeley is very interested, and Oakland's just sort of mildly interested.
And then let me clarify.
Lukewarm to the idea.
This is a program strictly for drug-related
Offenders,
issues?
Yeah, so it's
Would that include alcoholism? If somebody is repetitively picked up for being drunk
for
in
public
public?
drunkenness?
Yeah.
I don't think it does. I think there's
I
an
don't think
association
so.
with narcotics.
Yeah.
But
Well, okay, I just want to know that. So it sounds to me like one of the important factors in here is the county's support and the county's money being used for a lot of these, a lot of the personnel. Where is Alameda County on the lead? Are they actively pursuing it at the state legislature to get some of that money? Do we know?
Well, so the way that we've written the program, based on the advice we've been getting from Seattle's leadership, is that the county itself doesn't apply. It's the agencies that get into a system of MOUs. So it would be like Nancy O'Malley with a local police chief or two that wanted, if we wanted to say the San Pablo corridor between 32nd and 40th Street, and that's 2 jurisdictions, it would basically be a commitment that we will operate this program in these spaces. The county doesn't need to commit funds because the county has existing behavioral health resources, existing other things that are just leveraged. They're just used in the way they would, because we would have used them for, to treat people who are eligible anyways. It's just that we're not focusing them on people who are habitually engaged.
So have we engaged with Nancy O'Malley yet?
I have had a conversation with Nancy O'Malley. I had a couple of conversations.
Has she sparked any interest in our particular little area?
In Alameda County in general, yes. Nancy has sort of a broad focus in her response to crime and public health issues, and so yes, she's interested in
I understand that, and I understand we don't have the gross numbers. On the other hand, we have an area that clearly has been proven to be the same repetitive offenders over and over again, and we have a reputation for a city that is able to move forward. We're not bogged down in layers and layers of bureaucracy and infighting and all that kind of stuff. How do we move this forward as a city? And what are the costs that would be involved for this city?
Sure, I can answer that.
Well, yeah, I think we're in a good position because I'm the only chief in this area who's part of the conversation at the Capitol. And Mr. Bauters is pushing the legislation. I think our focus needs to be support for what's on the agenda in terms of the bill that Mr. Bauters referred to, and maybe some support from City Council in the form of a letter advocating for this bill would be very beneficial. I think we're positioned nicely because Mr. Bauters and I are both in the conversation and leading it to some extent and trying to engage others. I think the opportunity for us to be considered as a location for a pilot program is
what I'm looking for
very
is visibility, both at the Capitol and with Nancy O'Malley and whoever else we have to be, JPA, and clearly we have to have the support of the majority of the council. And can we bring this forward to the council? How is the bill moving, John?
So the bill is in appropriations committee right now on the suspense file, and they will take bills off of suspense on the 25th of this month. So we could send anything before the 25th. The other thing is the budget ask. So as the chief mentioned, I'm the sponsor for Lonnie Hancock's bill. So I'm the person who does the drafting of the bill. I lobby the bill, I work the bill. We have the very strong support of the Cal Chiefs Association, and so we've had law enforcement support for the bill, and so we anticipate that the bill won't have a problem. Always the challenge is the funding. We're asking the state to put down seed money to fund 4 jurisdictions at these local micro levels, right? This beat area, to give 4 jurisdictions the opportunity.
We fit right into micro levels.
Yeah, well, so I'm talking to that neighborhood scope, right? The neighborhood scope. To give 4 local jurisdictions the opportunity to do 3-year pilot programs, where the money that the state would put down would be the only money that's not currently funded through existing resources, which is for, it covers overtime for police for the meetings, and it covers the case management services. So there's somebody who's a company that's contracted with. So in Seattle, they used a company called Evergreen Treatment Services, and Evergreen has 8 staff people whose full job is to respond to whatever law enforcement needs with any of the 325 people in their lead program.
So that's what the
money goes to, is to pay for those services for the 3 years of the pilot.
I actually have a question.
The other question, I have another question for Chief Donna. where does the POA stand on this LEAD program? Have they been informed of it? Are they supportive? Are they, do you have any information on that?
No, we haven't had any formal discussions with the POA as a unit.
Well, they're the front line, so I certainly want to know
But I've
what
certainly
they feel about
had
it.
discussions with various people in the department about this concept.
So I had a question about, John, is there any measurements on crime reduction in that area of Seattle? Because as we know, narcotics cost a lot of money. And to fund that, a lot of people have to commit crime. If you get them out of that vicious cycle, then you save money on crime reduction as far as auto burglaries, residential burglaries, stuff like that. And then I think you also save money on the officer's response. So like what we're facing right now with people drunk in public, now we're facing it that we have to actually take them to the jail and book them and send the report to the DA's office. So that takes a lot of time for the officers.
Yeah.
And everything's kind of going back down to the street level where the officers are, instead of, we used to be able to put them, just take them, put them in custody and come back out on the street. But it seems like, the money's funded up front, we'll eventually get that back, you would think, because then the officers would be back on the street serving the public a little bit better.
Well, one of the other, yeah, that's true. So there's, the University of Washington is doing a follow-up study to the 52-page report they did last year that had the preliminary numbers. They're doing one on crime outcomes that's supposed to come out in the next month or so. So we're waiting for that, which is specific to what actual changes in behaviors did we see. But to the other point you made, one of the things about the process is that process you just described about having to take them here, then book them, paperwork, all this stuff that you do. With the pre-booking deferral to the program, you literally call me as the case manager, and you are back on the beat immediately. I show up and pick the person up.
Yeah,
and so once I'm in the program as a participant, anytime you encounter me, you have the option. If you don't want to put me back in jail, it's your discretion. If you're like, John's not taking the program seriously, John's not really doing this, John needs to go to jail today, then you still have all that authority. But if now I'm in the program and you say, he's been doing really well for a few months, now I see him out here, he's going through an addiction cycle, sort of thing. You call the case management. Case management shows up and picks him up. Right. So you don't have to go through that whole process. You can be focused on the other needs that the community has that are more serious and dangerous than the guy who's just got an addiction on the street.
I have another question. One component of the repetitive actions up on San Pablo Avenue is the large number of 5150s that we have over and over and over again, many of them the same people. If they are engaged in drug addiction, would they be able to be part of this program?
Yes.
Have they found that in Seattle, that they pick up some of
There's
the...
an extremely high, not to be too thank you for
correlation.
I was going to say comorbidity rate, which is a psycho term, but yeah, there's a high correlation, dual diagnosis of people who have mental health issues untreated and who have drug addiction.
Exactly.
It's about a 65% overall.
Now tell me again, how do we move this forward? This is a very interesting, and it sounds like it's a very productive
It
program.
takes the cooperation of all the other stakeholders. So the public defender has to want to do it, which they most do. The DA has to want to do it. The law enforcement agency has to want to do it, and they have to be able to agree upon a services provider that will assist them with it.
And
So
I've
what do you
already
need from the
spoken to
council?
public defender's office here, and they want to be part of this.
Yeah.
So I think we have a very good chance.
What kind of direction, specific direction, do you need from the city council to get this rolling?
I think support for
Support
the
letter would be
project,
great.
and then encouragement for all the stakeholders to work together.
Yeah, and a conversation to honestly to Lonnie Hancock that the city wants to do this, and a conversation probably with Oakland, because to the chief's point, a lot of this stuff is border activity, and so it's
That's
a really
where our supply of
we
bad
need
stuff
to
comes
have the ability to have partners in both cities who work together on that,
Right.
because it's a challenge on border areas. But it's really the ability to show that everybody is willing to do it together. That's the biggest piece, but when it comes to actually funding it, the way we've written the bill is that the grants will be administered by the Board of State and Community Corrections, which is sort of the administrative agency that gives out law enforcement grants anyway at the state
What
level.
do you think about this, Carolyn?
I, unfortunately, I'm trying to get the word out there before I have to scoot off to an appointment now for a meeting. But if either of you could let me know if we need to draft, or of course if there is a sample draft that we can work with as to a letter that we can put on the agenda. If it needs to be submitted before we can get it on a council agenda, then we would even be open with this committee's obvious reception of the idea that perhaps the chief and I could initially from staff co-sign a letter advocating, but then to get something before the council as soon as possible.
I think you want to get the elected representative on
Yeah.
there. Diane and you and the chief. I think your son signed the letter. Let's get this thing rolling.
Sure.
We have an opportunity here
Mhm.
because we're small and we can move relatively quickly.
I can tell you that BART and San Francisco are already looking to put a proposal together for a 4-block area around the 16th and Mission Station in San Francisco.
Right.
And so at first, San Francisco didn't want to work with BART, but then BART did, and so there's been a lot of interest, and now San Francisco is working with BART, and so they already have an agreement that if this money comes online, they want to apply to deal with the 16th and Mission neighborhood.
Scott,
So-
what do you?
I agree.
You agree on
Yeah,
that?
that's a good idea.
And in the meantime, if we do want to talk about a strategy that's multi-jurisdictional as well, then obviously
I think that strengthens an application from us,
we
for
can
sure.
do that.
But
Yeah. if we
Work on the
can
draft
initiate.
letters, you guys. Okay, let's roll it.
Nora, I think we have to talk with the Oakland Business Group from West Oakland. They would really be interested in this, and they would
And they're
actively.
coming next Thursday to the Public Works Committee to discuss some of the problems that we have between West Oakland and ourselves, you know, on with the homeless issue and
So
things
we
like
probably
that.
want to give them a heads up, even before that meeting, that this may come up, or we may wish
Well,
to talk to them.
it's an opportunity. John, what are you doing next Thursday at 11 o'clock?
state budget next week.
Too
I'm in
bad.
Sacramento all week.
Chief, what are you doing next Thursday at 11 o'clock?
I'll be at your meeting, I'm sure.
Well, it's just an opportunity because we're really serious about solving some of these problems, and this is a real opportunity here,
Yeah.
okay?
I
Yeah.
think that this group from West Oakland does have the ear of the city manager's office
Yes.
Okay.
In Oakland.
Right,
So
right.
I think.
So it's a good opportunity. Very concise presentation though, 8 minutes tops.
Very good.
Okay. But just
Okay.
to, you know, throw the stone in the pool.
Yeah.
Okay, move along, Scott.